Hey everyone, it's Esmond. Welcome to the channel and welcome to another Deck Tech episode. Today I am building Prosper Tome-Bound at two different power levels, friendly and powerful. So let's talk about Prosper. This guy is the new Rakdos commander from the D&D AFR commander set, and he provides both card and mana advantage in the form of Impulse Draw and Treasure tokens. So Impulse Draw is when we exile cards in order to cast them, and normally we can only cast them for 1 or 2 turns before it's exiled permanently. So he is just really strong as a value engine sitting in the command zone, but obviously he wants to focus on the Exile Matters theme in order to get more treasures. So we just want to make sure that we are constantly exiling cards to cast them and get treasure tokens from Prosper to cast even more stuff. So let's start with the friendly build. This is how I like to visualize the power level and objective of a deck. So using a relative scale from Precon to CEDH, this build is definitely closer in terms of power level to a Precon. So the aim or the game plan of this deck is to develop Exile Matters synergies, so build up a board state where everything cares about exiling cards, and then we want to cast spells from everyone's deck, so not just our own deck but opponents' decks as well. And finally, to just win through overwhelming value. Or we do have a few alternate win cons that we kind of build around, so we can win through that as well. And I like to use these metrics to just help me visualize and explain what decks are good and bad at. So for this one, there's a really strong focus on theme. Overall, we just have a lot more thematic cards, rather than just purely powerful cards. And I go in depth into this power level explanation in my previous video, you can go check it out. But basically from this, we can see that overall this deck is only slightly better at all the metrics compared to a Precon. It's nowhere near maximum for any of the metrics. And there are no infinite loops or combos in this build, although like I said, it's very possible to win via an alternate win con, which is kind of, combo-y and a way to end the game. Okay, so this is the deck. The main theme is going to be Exile Matters, like I said, but there is also a sub-theme of Theft. That's why the name is Prosper, Exile, and Steal. So the first category we have here is Exile Matters Value. These are the cards that care about exiling our own cards and giving us additional value. So Dream Devourer, just mana reducer, as well as helping us exile cards from our hand so that we can cast them. Burgi, we mostly care about the flip side, which is Harnfell. So we discard a card, we get 2 cards. Bone Crusher Giant, removal and exile spell when we cast it as an adventure. Briar's Apprentice gives us something to do with our treasure tokens. Sacrifice them and exile the top card of our library. Jeska's Will, card advantage and mana. Leila, more card advantage when it attacks. Murderous Rider, very similar to Bone Crusher Giant. Poison the Cup, just removal and foretell again. Theater of Horrors, more card advantage. Valakut Exploration, giving us landfall, card advantage. And this one, the cards go back into the graveyard if we don't cast them from exile, so that's not too bad. Chandra, so flexible, giving us mana or card advantage or just removal. Chaos Channeler, a fun new one from AFR. When it attacks, we either exile 1, 2 or 3 cards from the top of our library. Oracle's Vault, another really fun card. So we can pay 2 mana, exile the top card of our library, and until end of turn we can play that card. And if we do this 3 times, then we can just tap it after that and exile the top card and play it for free. So really fun one to cheat stuff out without paying mana. Outpost Siege. Normally we're going to choose Khans for this, so at the beginning of our upkeep we get a card. Tectonic Giant, when it attacks we can either deal 3 to each opponent or exile the top 2 cards and choose one. Uba Mask, really interesting in this deck because it affects everyone, so if anyone withdraw a card instead it gets exiled and everyone may play those exiled cards that they own, of course. Wild Magic Sorcerer, another really fun spell. The first spell we cast from exile each turn has Cascade, so meaning if we cast any spell from exile, it cascades, giving us another spell. So essentially we get 1 free spell off of that spell. Bituminous Blast, more Cascade, and this is removal as well. Volcanic Torrent, Cascade, and a pseudo board wipe depending on how many spells we've cast that turn. Dream Pillager, 7 mana 4/4 dragon, has to deal combat damage and we get cards off the top of our library. So all these cards here basically just giving us value from our deck, whether it's removal, card advantage, and some of them, we can only cast non-land cards, others we can play lands, but it's all basically just value. Alright, so moving on, this is the Exile Matters, the theft category. All these cards are concerned with stealing our opponent's stuff. We have Doughty Voidwalker, Pseudo Graveyard Hit, Direfleet Daredevil, getting instant sorceries from an opponent's graveyard. Share the Spoils, a really fun new one when it ETBs or when an opponent loses the game. Each player exiles the top card of their library, and any player can play any of those cards. When they play a card from exile this way, they exile the top card of their library to kind of replace that card. We have Valky, God of Lies / Tybalt, so both sides really care about exiling stuff. You find some prisoners, good flexible spell to destroy artifacts, or we can exile the top 3 cards of an opponent's library and choose one of them. Chaos Wand, another really fun one that I like. 3 mana, we pay 4, tap it and we choose an opponent, they exile cards until they hit an instant or sorcery, we can cast it for free. Cunning Rhetoric might stop people from attacking us, but if they do attack us, then they exile the top card and we can play that card. Keru Mind Eater, so this is a 3 mana, 1/3 menace. When it deals combat damage, they exile a card from their hand face down and we can play it. Opposition Agent, not much to say about this, you probably know it. Praetor's Graphs, also a really powerful card, tutoring our opponent's library for a card to play. Breaches, this is a fun one from Commander Legends, 4 mana, 3/3 menace. It's a pirate, and whenever one or more pirates we control deal damage to our opponents, we exile the top card of each of those opponents' library. We can play it this turn. Next up, we have Draugr Necromancer, and this is the entire reason why we are playing Snowlands in the deck. It's very similar to Doughty Voidwalker, except it only applies to non-token creatures that opponents controls. So if they die, they get exiled instead with ice counters, and we can cast those creatures. We can spend mana from snow sources as though they were mana of any color to cast those spells. Then we have Gonti ETBs, look at top 4 cards, we choose one, Hurl Through Hell, removal, and we get that creature. Well, we can cast that creature. Author of Shadows, more graveyard hit, we exile all cards from opponent's graveyards, we can choose one and play that card. Fiend of Shadows, very similar to Keru Mind Eater, but this is a 5 mana 3/3 with flying. And then we have Stolen Strategy, beginning of our upkeep. Each opponent exiles the top card and we can play that card for that turn. Italy, very similar except when it attacks, each player exiles the top card, we can cast them for free. Fevered Suspicion, also another similar Stolen Strategy kind of card with Rebound. Then we move on to Treasures and Dragons, because we're going to have a ton of treasures, we want to create more treasures, and it's a D&D set, so what is a more flavorful way to finish off the game than with some big dragons? So first up, Curse of Opulence. This creates gold tokens, but it's very similar to treasures, so we're putting that in. Then we have Magda. She makes so much use of our treasures. She makes treasures herself when she gets tapped, and then we can, just sacrifice 5 treasures, find an artifact or dragon onto the field, boom. Treasure Map, this is great early, kind of filtering through our deck, and if we get to flip it, we can then sacrifice treasures to draw cards. Academy Manufactor, new one. If we would create a treasure, we instead create a clue, food, and a treasure, so insane value from this card. Captain Lenary Storm, another pirate that we have in the deck. When it attacks, we get a treasure token. Inspiring Statuary, making use of our treasure tokens to cast spells. Shiny Impetus, kind of removal, also gives us treasures. Zorn, doubling our treasure production. Goldspan Dragon, giving us treasures and letting them tap for more mana. Revel in Riches, the first of our alternate win cons. If we have 10 treasures at the beginning of our upkeep, we win the game. Hellkite Tyrant is our next alternate win con. If we control 20 or more artifacts, we win the game. When it deals combat damage, we gain control of all artifacts from that player. And here is where we get into the really big dragons. We have Inferno of the Star Mount and Molten Steel Dragon. Both of them, we can pay mana to pump them up and essentially kind of kill people from there. So Inferno of the Star Mount, if we get it to 20 power, it deals 20 damage to any target. Molten Steel Dragon, we can pay life because it's Phyrexian mana. It gets +1 power until end of turn. Hellkite Igniter, if we have a ton of artifacts on the board, things like Academy Manufactor, Goldspan Dragon, Zorn, just a bunch of artifacts, we just pay 2 mana, it gets +10 or +15 until end of turn. It's huge. And finally, we have Reckless Endeavor, a 7 mana board wipe-ish in this deck. It's one of the only board wipes in the deck. We roll 2d12 and choose one result. It deals damage equal to that result to each creature. Then for the other result, we make that a number of treasure tokens. So, more treasure stuff. Then we have ramp. We're focusing on maximum 2 mana value ramp. So everything here is 2 MV or less, and we have 8 pieces of ramp that gives us a more than 50% chance of finding one by turn 2 and letting us cast Prosper by turn 3. The mana base, we are running 37 lands. Interesting lands here are going to be the artifact lands to up our artifact counts. Then we have some Graveyard Hate with Scavenger Grounds and Bojuka Bog. We have Rogue's Passage because some of our creatures care about getting through for damage. Of course, we have all the snow lands for our Draugr Necromancer. We have Treasure Vault, makes treasures. We have Shatterskull Smashing and Akadim's Awakening as our 2 MDFCs. So with 37 lands, we are aiming to just hit 4 lands as consistently as possible, because you can see from the curve here that most of our spells are going to fall within the 2, 3 and 4 mana value range. So that's it for the friendly build. You can see it's very thematic, it's very focused on Exile Matters and on stealing stuff. Alright, so moving on to the powerful build of Prosper. This build is going to be on the higher end of the powerful rating. You know, I'd be okay taking this out against lower tier CEDH decks. You can see from this metrics that it's going to be really fast. It's full of fast mana. It's pretty consistent because it plays a lot of tutors and has a lot of card advantage. The combo potential is high. That's our main win con, to win via several combo lines. But there's still some consideration for thematic cards, especially those which synergize really well with Prosper. So in this build, the aim or the game plan is going to be to get Prosper out ASAP, either by turn 2 or turn 3, and we want to just go start digging through our deck and making treasures. Then we want to assemble one of our combo lines, and at the same time we're trying to disrupt our opponents in order to buy us more time to find our pieces. Okay, so moving on to the powerful build. This is Prosper Infinity Bound. And we're going to start off with the ramp, because in this deck it's so important to get Prosper out. We want him out turn 1, turn 2, turn 3 at the latest. We have Chrome Mox, Lotus, Crib, Ritual, Soul Ring, 12 pieces of ramp. We also have Ancient Tomb in this deck, so there is above a 70% chance of just getting Prosper out by turn 3. Really fast ramp pieces we have here. Then we have some of the best Exile Matters synergy cards. We have Tutors, Wheels, we have Ragavan. We have Commune with Lava for card advantage, Dorothy Voidwalker for Graveyard Hate, Daredevil for like a Stampcaster Mage essentially. Dream Devourer actually works to kind of save our cards in our hand in case someone wants to wheel them away. We have Bergie again, but mostly using her as Harnfell. Then Bria's Apprentice, we have Jeska's Will, we have Removal from Rider, Opposition Agent, Praetor's Graph, Chandra, Alpo Siege. So all these cards are in the previous deck. These are just the best ones for this strategy. So next up we have the combo lines, and this deck is mainly trying to win by one of these combo lines. So the first one is Dockside, another creature, and then Cloudstone Curio. We need to have Curio on the board and one of these creatures on the board. Then we cast the other creature, triggering Cloudstone Curio, bouncing the other creature back to our hand. So Dockside here needs to provide at least 5 treasures so that we can repeatedly cast Magda and then bounce Dockside back, cast Dockside, bounce Magda back, and always netting 1 treasure token, which means we have infinite mana. Then with all those treasures lying around, we can just sacrifice them all to Magda and essentially find any artifacts or dragons. And well, what do you know? The next combo line, they're all artifacts, so we can find them all. So what happens is that we have these pieces on the board, and then we activate the top, putting it back on top of our library, paying 1 life to cast it using Bolas's Citadel, and then every time we cast a spell, we gain life from Aetherflux Reservoir, we gain a ton of life, we use all that life and blast our opponents into oblivion. So one thing I like, and one of the reasons why I chose these combos, is because most of the cards already want to be in a Prosper deck. Dockside cares about treasures, so does Magda. Sensei's Top cares about the top deck, which is really important for Prosper. You always want to make sure you can cast the card on top of your deck because he's going to exile it at the end of your turn. Bolas's Citadel is a really interesting way to make use of treasure tokens lying around, because we can sacrifice 10 of them and each opponent loses 10 life. So these 4 cards already kind of want to be in a Prosper deck. We're just adding in 2 more artifacts and playing into the more artifact side of the deck, and I think it makes for pretty flavorful combo lines. Alright, then we're going to move on to a big chunk of the deck, which is the interaction and value. So these cards are just basically good stuff. We have Faithless Looting, Gamble for a Tutor, Welder for Graveyard Recursion, we have Tutor, we have Removal, Tutor, Removal, recursion, protection, interaction, counterspell, we have recursion, we have a tutor, we have a win more card, making more tokens, academy manufacturer, this is just a fun card. We have more removal, protection, board wipe, tutor, card advantage, board wipe, tutor, card draw, more token stuff. We have this is directly also very utility stuff, letting us either discard and draw or sacrifice and return artifacts, and deadly relic for more removal. Then if we manage to just have so many treasures on the board, these are some ways you can end the game. Disciple of the Vault is very similar to Mayhem Devil and Nadia's Nightblade. So what happens is that when we sacrifice all the treasures, we can just ping damage everywhere. If we have a ton of treasures, we can also exsanguinate everyone to death. Treasure map, I already talked about this. Revel in Riches, just another flavorful win con for this deck. Then we're moving on to the lands. We have 34 of them, and this time we have 3 MDFCs. The third one is going to be Malaka Rebirth, just to protect our combo pieces, or Prosper. We're playing the Fetch lands, we're playing Gemstone Caverns, we're playing Buried Ruin for more recursion, and 34 lands because we kind of want to hit at least 3 lands by turn 3. So hitting our first 3 land drops is really important, because you can see from the curve here that our deck everything is kind of within 3 mana value or less. So that first 3 lands are going to be really important. Alright, so finally, I'm just going to do a quick side-by-side comparison to kind of illustrate the difference between a friendly and a powerful build. And you can just see that the difference in how I structure the build, the friendly deck is more concerned with thematic cards, giving us value, building up a board state, whereas the more powerful decks are more concerned with ramping, accelerating very quickly, getting some synergy, but the main win con is a combo. Whereas for the friendly deck, the win con is basically for the deck to do what it's built to do. It's all about, self-expression, playing into the theme of the commander and what he wants to do. And overall, it's just really more flavorful. I would say, powerful decks are flavorful too, but just not to the same extent. You see a much lower percentage of cards that are on theme, and a much higher percentage of cards are just good stuff and good value cards that don't necessarily fit into the theme. Finally, the last thing we can see is that in terms of mana base and in terms of the curve, for friendly decks, it's a much more distributed curve where things kind of top out around 3, 4, 5. Whereas for the more powerful decks, they kind of top out at 2 and 3 with a few things above 3 mana value. And overall, the average mana value of the main board for friendly decks, this one is 3.53, whereas the powerful one is 2.28, and that's a really big difference. But of course, I think that the biggest difference is in terms of how the deck is constructed. What are your main priorities when you're building a deck? Is it to be on theme, to be flavorful, or is it to have a lot of good value cards in the deck and maybe some, thematic cards just to round out what the deck is trying to do? But other than that, that's it for this deck tech video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below, what should I build next? How can I improve on this kind of deck tech series? And yeah, thank you all for watching. Go check out my other videos. I will see you all next time. Bye.